it seems like we have a different narrative going now after DeepSeek developments last week. It's kind of sparking this renewed escalation in an arms race in AI. But at the same time, you have the Biden administration's executive order on AI being rescinded in Trump's first week in office. Where does this leave any kind of priority for AI safety in the U.S.?
That's a very good point. And these are a lot of the arguments that we're hearing. We believe that step one is understanding what the problem is. Now, what you'll often hear people say is that the problem is that China is going fast and the U.S. needs to go faster. Sure. But why is China going fast? Is China going fast because they're independently developing their own technology that can rival U.S. technology? No, and I don't think anyone believes that. They're piggybacking off of U.S. efforts. They're using U.S. chips or U.S. design chips, and they're using U.S. design algorithms. So if we're serious about keeping our lead over China, we have to understand how they're getting access to this technology and act accordingly. If we simply run faster and they're holding onto our back, we are not going to outrun them.
So you have worked for senators. When you're going and advising government, do you just say, look, fast follow is the way forward, but from China, but here's what we do to protect ourselves? What is the response?
It's difficult, and I think the understanding is that there are different policy tools that the U.S. government has used to try to prevent China from fast following. And we understand them as chip controls, export controls, concerns about security of both closed weight and open weight models. And these things are very technical. But I do think that a lot of what you're hearing about how none of these things are working and we just need to throw it all away or think about what we're doing misses the mark. We know that a lot of the chip export controls have a time delay. So what China was using to train their models was based off of chips that they are no longer able to get in large part. So we needed to give the export controls time to work. There's also a very good argument to be made about expanding the export controls and covering chips that probably should have been covered the first time around, but weren't for whatever reason. So there's a number of things that we can do instead of simply throwing our hands in the air.
But does that not choke the golden goose that has been NVIDIA? How do you ensure that they prosper at the same time as curtailing their ability to sell?
What's really interesting is that if you looked at NVIDIA's reaction to what the Biden administration did, they certainly complained about what was called the diffusion rule, which limited some of their exports. However, the diffusion rule really didn't have much impact on NVIDIA's stock price. It was pretty minimal. And if you look at what happened with DeepSeek, that obviously had a major impact on NVIDIA's stock price. So we would make the argument that NVIDIA actually does well if you prevent some of these non-U.S. companies from simply using tools to more or less steal technology from the U.S., particularly the algorithms, by using NVIDIA chips. So in the long run, I believe this would actually benefit companies like NVIDIA.
Doug, pivoting to Washington a bit, when you were on the show in November, you mentioned that you were actually a fan of one of President Trump's executive orders from his first administration, and the man behind that order was Michael Kratsios, who was just appointed to be the director for the Office of Science and Technology, due to be confirmed at the end of the month. And I'm curious, what, knowing about Kratsios and his approach in the past as former White House chief technology officer, what kind of approach to policy are you expecting from this office?
So Kratsios is a very serious person, and he understands the technology well. And I would put in the same camp Howard Lutnick, who's Trump's designee to be the Commerce Secretary. So Kratsios and Lutnick are going to be two of the people who have the biggest influence on AI policy in the Trump administration. And we saw Lutnick at his most recent hearing, his confirmation hearing, saying that he believes in the export controls. He believes we need to be serious about clamping down on Chinese access to U.S. technology. And he's going to see it through. And, I think that he and Kratsios together will really want to do whatever they can to maintain the U.S. lead in innovation.